Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. So tonight we're going to talk about data science and generative AI. And in particular, we'd like to focus on everyone's understanding of generative AI and its impact on data science. And as someone who would like to work in the data field, what should we do? Should we embrace generative AI? How much do we need to learn about generative AI? I would like to have a lot of group discussions, and I will do some polls, and I will be sharing a brief generative AI learning path with everyone. So hopefully it's helpful for you if you're thinking about learning more about generative AI and large language modeling. Before we get started, just a quick shout out to WeCloudData. I work for WeCloudData, and we're data science and AI training boot camps. So we have different courses. I'm going to share some of these links that you're seeing right now on my screen with you in the chat. But just so everyone know that we have data science boot camps where we train students and put them on real industry projects, and then we help students get jobs. In March this year, we're also launching generative AI and no-code AI training course. So if you're interested in learning more about generative AI, we're launching a new course. And then for students who's enrolled in any of our January and February boot camps, this course comes as free for those students. And then we also have a separate NLP and large language modeling course if you would like to get more specialized in Gen AI. All right. I would like to kick off this session with some polls. I prepared some questions. I would like to sort of test everyone's understanding of Gen AI or your feeling about generative AI. I'm going to use the Zoom poll feature, and just please, will be great if you can give me some feedback and do the poll so we understand what everybody's thinking about when it comes to generative AI. I guess my first poll will be ChatGPT's impact on you. So let me launch this poll. All right, so for those of you who just joined, we're doing a poll on generative AI and ChatGPT's impact on you. Just trying to understand the audience a little bit better. Would love to have some discussion about this as well. I'll share the poll results at the end. All right. Looks like everybody has, most of us has done the poll. I'm going to end this poll and share the results with everyone. So I hope you can see the poll results. So the question was, what has changed for you since the introduction of Gen AI tools like ChatGPT? Looks like 6 out of the 21 attendees, like about 30%, said I use ChatGPT more often than Google now. Well, that's very interesting because I think OpenAI is having a pretty big impact on Google's bottom line right now. It's probably not materialized, but I think Google definitely is trying to play the catch-up game in certain areas. I don't think their ad revenue is getting hit that hard because they're still growing. But as you can tell, they're doing a lot of layoffs. But I think they're just trying to reorganize the company and just to get prepared for this Gen AI wave. Still one of the top companies out there. I mean, the BERT algorithm was actually initially developed at Google, so it'll be interesting to see the official release of the pro version of the Gemini product this year. I did find myself using ChatGPT more often, but still I'm primarily using Google if I would like to get some results really fast. And about 5 out of the 21 participants said I rely more on ChatGPT than Stack Overflow. And that is also very interesting. I think I think the really nice thing about ChatGPT is that it can actually write some starter code for you that really saves time. But I would like to hear from the audience as well. And 33% of the people rely on ChatGPT for ideas. 30% use ChatGPT for data analysis. I'm really curious to know like how you actually use ChatGPT for data analysis. So I'm gonna open it up, and please feel free to unmute yourself or raise hand and leave your comments in Zoom chat. I would love to know what you think about these ChatGPT and its impact. Anyone would like to chime in?
This is Curtis Corbett. I'm a principal solutions architect to give you some background. I think it largely depends on the level of technological skill combined with the level of personal know-how as to where ChatGPT falls in. For example, I myself, who is a principal solutions architect, I have a master's degree, and I'm currently working on a doctorate in data science and artificial intelligence. I primarily use it to do things like I'll write an Instagram on a LinkedIn post because it's easy and it can say what I would say anyway, and I don't have to actually write it.
Right. That's very true. I also found myself like leveraging ChatGPT for a lot of the easy tasks. But have you tried to leverage ChatGPT in your, I think you're doing a doctor's program. Like, have you leveraged that in, in school when you're doing research?
Oh, so right now I'm doing a lot of the preliminary research because my focus is going to be data science. It's going to be AI in education. So I've been learning, researching, and working with all of the current, like the algorithms, like your k-nearest neighbors, understanding all of those things and finding out what fits my use case. And it's looking like primarily it's going to be neural networks and relationary databases with unstructured data to make inferences and make decisions on a user's behalf to help influence learning is the direction that I'm going. I am going to the plan for the next 12 months is actually to work on introducing my first version of a neural network that can, make changes based on user input, and I'm focusing it on AI in education is what I'm doing personally.
That's awesome. Thanks, Curtis, for your input. Daniela, I saw you raise your hand. You would like to give your thoughts on this?
Yes, hi. Hi, I'm Daniela. ChatGPT inspired me to create technology for people with invisible disabilities. Because I just don't think that really a human is meant to do that sometimes. They all come with their own sort of like preconceived notions of stuff, whereas ChatGPT can just sort of like logically tell you what's going on and help you with like micro steps depending on where you need to go or what direction, or even be able to track things that maybe somebody with a neurodivergence has already figured out. This doesn't work for them, or that doesn't work for them, or just being able to track your habits, things like that are really hard for people with executive dysfunction and chronic illness. So I think it just really inspired me to bridge the gap between people with invisible disabilities waiting for accommodations and just offering accommodations.
Thank you very much for your input, Daniela. And I see Palm also raised his hand.
Hey, thanks. So I use ChatGPT for various reasons. First, I just did finish my MBA in Toronto, and it was quite helpful to basically summarize everything I wrote in some instances, or it would summarize, large decks that I don't want to read through. So it would summarize like 31 decks in like maybe 2 pages and what's important, what's not. Also, I think the first person mentioned this where, or maybe you did, where I would initially write a post for LinkedIn, but we're not always the best at being grammatically correct or providing the right tone for our post when we personally write it. I feel like ChatGPT really helped in a sense not write it for me, but once I wrote it and I told it what kind of tone I need, it created such beautiful posts, to be honest. And on top of that, I also utilize ChatGPT for immigrants. I do volunteering where I actually help immigrants who don't know a lot about the Canadian system or aren't very English is not their strongest language. So I tell them prompts like one person, a landlord who owns a house here, English isn't the strongest, but they wanted to create a landlord-tenant agreement, and they didn't want to pay extra fees to the lawyer, and this was the easiest way for them to do it. I think the simplest things ChatGPT can do now without us having to pay $200-300 to an external party, where they would take 10 minutes to write it but charge that much. And now it does it all. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And we needed this.
Great input. Yeah, I think some of the use cases you mentioned, like helping immigrants, that's very inspiring. And ChatGPT does do a very good job on summarizing things. That's one of the very good use cases of Gen AI. Cool.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry. And also, I think ChatGPT is different than Copilot, which is different than Bard. I've tried to use all three of them for different reasons. Like Copilot is not good at creating LinkedIn posts. It will tell you, sorry, I'm not going to do that. Whereas ChatGPT would just do exactly what you tell it to do. But Copilot is really good at analyzing data, which I see that you were talking about earlier. So each one has its strengths. So yeah, that's where I'll end it off. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. These are different, agents created for different purposes. Bard is more similar to ChatGPT. They're, fine-tuned on the GPT or the Google algorithms. And Copilot is more like an application where it helps you, with coding. And that's why, it can do things like data analysis. Very cool. I'm going to stop sharing the results and let's move on to the next one. I prepared 4 questions and thanks, for all the great discussion so far. Next question is, let's talk about AI's impact on jobs. So again, this is a data science talk and, we would like to discuss data science and generative AI. So my question is, do you think generative AI will replace data scientists' job in the next 5 to 10 years? I think we all have our own opinion, and we're yet to see, where the technology leads us. But I'm curious to know your current thought on this. Awesome. Thanks for your input. Let's just wait a few more minutes, a few more seconds, and I'll share the results. Cool. I'll end the poll. And let me share the results. Very interesting. So 6 out of 25 participants said yes, Gen AI will replace data scientist job. Half of us said, you can't tell yet. Maybe it's too early to tell. And 25% said we will always need data scientists, and 3 said it's not likely to replace data scientist jobs. I'd love to hear from you guys. For those of you who said yes, I would like to hear the reason why you believe that it's going to replace data scientist jobs. And then for those who said, we'll always need data scientists, tell us how you think. I'll share my thoughts at the end as well, but I think it'll be a very interesting discussion. I think this is also quite relevant to, to all of us.
I hate to be the person to speak up again, but since no one spoke right away, I will go ahead. This is Curtis again. But what I said not likely, but I said not likely because I say this, AI won't replace anyone unless they refuse to learn. The person that doesn't refuse to learn could stand to be quote unquote replaced in a certain way, whether it's by the technology or by someone else who knows the technology better than you, because it's simply the technology evolving is the way I look at it. So I say not likely because the data scientist of 5-10 years ago is different than the data scientist of today. You've got no code and you've got all these other things. So and then you've got prompt engineering that came out of essentially AI. So it's really a matter of evolution and what the next generation of the data scientist looks like, in my opinion, than replacing the data scientist itself.
Very well said. I like your point. Any other thoughts from other participants? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What Curtis just said? Upon? Sorry.
Sorry, if there's anyone else that needs to go because I already spoke, I'm totally cool with that. But if not, I can go.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't come from a very like I'm not a data scientist itself. So I'm a program manager where I take whatever the data scientists do and then put that in a slide deck, whatever, and present it, right? So I'm coming from that aspect, and maybe I could be totally wrong. For me, what I see, I think even Elon Musk or someone huge in the tech industry said this, where they're like, we're getting software engineers to program things so the program can replace them. And I could be totally wrong. Data scientists, I feel like it's a logical way of doing work. So basically you have a lot of data and you manipulate that in certain ways to get certain results or find out certain things, patterns and whatnot. I think we're going to eventually have machines do that, where they are growing to learn how to manipulate this data to give us what we need. I don't think it's going to be a data science is going to be what it is today. Is going to evolve for more like, I don't know, a different way of thinking than what they do today, because machines are definitely going to take over to do the nitty gritty. Like what a machine can do in like 10 seconds, the data science probably can do in like an hour, 2 hours to analyze all that data. That's just my opinion. I could totally be wrong, but yeah.
Thank you for your input, Parm. And I just saw a post or a comment by Miriam. Miriam, you seem to be you're an AI specialist. I'd love to hear from you. And also, by the way, Miriam seems to be working for a company called faculty.bio. And is that a tool that helps us, to build professional portfolio? But definitely check it out. And seems to be an AI tool. So I would love to hear from you if you would like to speak up and share your experience.
Hi. Yeah,
Hey,
thank
Miriam.
you for letting me know to
Oh, no problem.
give
Yeah.
me a chance to talk. Yeah. I really enjoy about what you like organizing the event and all the questions and all the discussions. For sure, ChatGPT and AI can help us. And if I want to introduce faculty.bio, it's a platform, it's an online platform that help people to build their professional portfolio or build their web page very simply and quickly for free. So the goal of this platform is help people to showcase all their achievements, skills, and all interests that they achieved in the academia and in industry. And this portfolio can help them to find a good job, to collaborate with others, this is stuff. But this basic version of our platform doesn't contain AI. In future, we will add it. Yeah, but thank you for introducing this on your event. And if you have any question, I'll be glad to respond and to connect.
Definitely check it out. I mean, we're here to network as well, right? And thanks for for speaking up and let us learn from your perspective. Thanks, Miriam. Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, here's my personal take on this. I wouldn't call myself, AI expert, but I've been working in data and AI for quite a while. I used to be a data scientist, and I've been teaching data science for years. We also recently started to teach generative AI with different companies. My take on this is that at least as of now, I don't think the technology is able to replace what a data scientist would do, because I think when you look at a data science project, it is way more than just writing a couple of lines of code, right? I think you can do prompting. You can prompt ChatGPT or Copilot. It's going to sort of spit out some code. But that code, again, you have to understand the training data is coming from the data collected from Stack Overflow and from the web, right? So it has seen a lot of similar code or questions before. So it's really helpful. Like if you say, I have this Titanic data set, can you teach me how to train a classification model? And I'm pretty sure it's going to do a very decent job. And I see some people saying that, well, if you copy the code and just run that in a Jupyter notebook or Python environment, it's a lot of times it's going to give you error, but it saves you a lot of time if you know data science already, right? I think in that sense, it can help you become really efficient, because it helps you sort of avoid writing a lot of the boilerplate code, right? And it would indeed save you time. But real life data science projects, the complex part, right, or the core skills of a data scientist is not really just writing a couple of lines code to train a model. Because if you have learned how to work with scikit-learn to train a decision tree, or someone mentioned, I forgot, is it Parm or Curtis? I mentioned like k-nearest neighbor. If you would like to train a k-nearest neighbor or neural network model in scikit-learn, it's just a couple of lines of code. I think ChatGPT will do really well in that. But we still need to analyze the data, because it doesn't have context, because it's trained on text, right? It doesn't have context about the data you're dealing with. And we come from different industries. We work even in the same industry, we work for different companies, and different companies have different ways of setting up their data warehouse, their database systems. And so I think that part is a little bit harder to replace, because as of now, I don't think ChatGPT has the capability to sort of sift through like large amounts of data, right? It charges you based on token. So which means if you're sending like long text to ChatGPT, it's going to charge you more. But in real life, we're dealing with millions of records and even billions of records. So if you send one table in one query to ChatGPT, I don't think it's able to handle that. But assuming that it's able to handle that, the cost is still going to be very high, right? So it's probably going to be insane amount of money you're going to pay. And while you can just use Python, and if you know how to code, then the cost is pretty much zero. So yeah, this is just my perspective. I think we're not at a point where it can actually do meaningful analysis of the data. And even if it can, I think people will have privacy concern. But I think it will eventually be able to do this. But again, keep in mind, we always remind our students that what turns someone into a very good data scientist, definitely not the coding skill. Coding skill is very important for you to get your first job, because that's the hard skills you need. You need to be able to write Python, SQL, to interact with data, to do analysis, visualization, machine learning. But I've worked with, some data scientists. They only focus on coding, but maybe they're lacking the willingness to, communicate with the business team. So they're not having big impact on the business. So communication, understand the business logic, these are very important. If you talk to a database or data engineer, and you may think that, well, their job maybe is just writing the SQL queries, but it's, way more complex than that, because data engineers also need to understand business rules, because when you build data warehouse and do data modeling, it all depends on how the end users are going to use the data. And then based on the need, you're going to do data modeling differently in different ways. And understanding how data is collected and how data inside is being used is going to help you build a better system. And I think right now, most of the GPT, whatever large language models are trained on public data. And that's why I see this trend shifting towards, building vertical solutions, vertical-based large language models. And then we'll need a lot of training data to do that. So I would put myself in can't tell yet. And I think also we will always need data scientists. But yeah, I'd love to hear more from you guys, but this is just my take on this. I'm going to stop sharing, and maybe we can move on to the next question. All right, the next one. How about this question? ChatGPT's coding capability. Do you think ChatGPT is good at solving your coding question or questions right now? Okay, cool. So here's the poll result. It's not surprising. I think majority of us think it's useful, but you can't really rely on it yet. I think 25% of participants think it's already very good. I think it's indeed very decent. And 2 said that it's not very helpful for them. Okay, cool. I think we discussed this already. So let's move on to other questions. I have some other questions. For example, I think we all agree that the technology is very powerful right now, and that's why it created so many buzz, right? AI has been around for many years, but people haven't really other than people using it, at large scale in big companies, but it hasn't really touched our daily lives until ChatGPT came out. And for example, many years ago, 2017. There's AlphaGo, but not everybody played the Go games, and so it's not like we think it's cool. It's very it's amazing, but it's not really impacting our daily life. But until ChatGPT, right? So I guess my next question is, what is the best use case for you, or what do you think is the best use case of ChatGPT? I don't have a poll for this, but feel free to chime in because I think. It's very important for us to understand what ChatGPT or large language model like technology, or even the vision language model, what are they really good at, right? And then obviously they're not good at everything yet. So I think someone mentioned like using it for just rewriting your whatever content. I think that's a very, very good use case. I personally use ChatGPT more often when I encounter something that I'm not familiar with, and I'm trying to get ideas from it. So doing some sort of research, I think ChatGPT is really good. But what I found out is that in the domain that I'm not expert in, or I'm very new to something, I'll use it to get ideas. but sometimes I just like, I'm not sure if it's telling me the truth. So I still need to sort of continue to take whatever I get from ChatGPT and just do more research or have more conversations, right? Just continue the conversation, or I'll take those ideas and I'll start doing Google search. That's how it works for me, but I would love to hear from you guys and what your experience like. We've done a lot of corporate trainings, training large companies in different research domains on generative AI and large language modeling. I found that a lot of those researchers that we've been working with, they start to like really rely on tools like ChatGPT to do AI automation and summarization, and they use that for generating ideas as well. A lot of them would love to sort of use ChatGPT combined with some other tools like Zapier or Power Automate to let's say if they would like to read a lot of paper on a weekly basis, they would like to use ChatGPT to do summarization, but they want to automate this process so it can be summarized and saved in a Google Drive or in a Google Sheet somewhere. This is one of the common use cases I've seen, and a lot of people are interested in using ChatGPT sort of to automate, let's say, email reminders, creating calendars. But yeah, would love to hear from you as well. What works best for you? What are some potential use cases you would like to share? Hey, Laila, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Lale,
Hey.
and so for about 4 to 5 months in 2023, I use LLM in the applications that I try to, for example, find the right data set. For example, if there is a business case, there is a question, I want to find the right data set and then do some data cleaning and, get some data analysis and even recommendation for visualization. Like, for example, I want to visualize this, and then what is the best plot, and describe it for me. These kind of questions. So I went through lots of, so basically I used LLM using LangChain. And, however, sometimes it looks smart, but it was really painful to use LLM and only rely on that one. So at the end of the day, basically we started from the point that let's do LLM to handle everything for us. So we went through extensive prompt engineering to try to get the answer from the LLM. But at the end of the day, we needed to transform our solution entirely. But one thing that LLM really was helpful was for example, for data cleaning. Like, imagine that you have many invoices, and for those invoices or transactions, you have some sort of description, and it is just someone just typed something as description of a transaction. And you want to just categorize them, that for example, you already know that all of these transactions are related to specific categories, but you want to somehow, instead of using text as description, you want to know which category it is, so that later on maybe you do some data analysis on that. So ChatGPT, LLM was really, LLM is behind ChatGPT basically. So LLM was really good at that. Instead of like doing clustering and try to do some natural language processing, LLM was good at just giving us which category this description belonged to. Like, for example, this is related to, for example, a purchase related to which department or which category of the products that we have. So in these kind of tasks, it is okay. But as you already said, like, for example, if we want to do some data analysis on that and answer some questions, because the amount of the data that we have is beyond the limitation of the tokens, it was really difficult. And the solution that we wanted to use for that is that we get the code out of that, and then run the code that our question as the answer of our question. But still that was painful because of the randomness in the answer that LLM tried to generate. So it doesn't matter how low you set up the temperature or randomness in your answer, still it's not consistent, and it was really painful. That's what it makes very difficult to rely on the answer that you get from LLM. If, for example, this time the answer is right, next time you never know that you will get the same answer. And even if in my notebook, for example, in my Jupyter notebook, I run it and many times I get the same answer. If my colleague use the same notebook, then they are going to get different answers. So these are the things that is still makes LLM not that trustworthy to use it for high level of analysis. Thank you.
Wow, that's great. I mean, isn't it great to hear from someone who has actually used this technology at work? So thank you so much, Laila, for sharing your experience. I completely agree with you. I mean, reliability remains one of the biggest challenges of large language models. And, even when you upgrade, ChatGPT or GPT, from versions to versions, because the model has changed slightly, it may not always give you exactly the same output, right? So some of your prompt template may actually have to change. Hopefully they can address this in the future, but that's one of the challenges we've seen. And yeah, everything you said, it was very true. And thanks for sharing. Any other thoughts? And Miriam, I just saw your comment as well. You said you're using LLMs to optimize SEO. I think the marketing agencies are actually definitely very impressed by ChatGPT. They're definitely thinking about how to leverage it for marketing and social media. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to introduce again, the product you have, because it seems like you guys have been using ChatGPT and AI for that. Without sharing any, company details or product details, but share your experience with us. Would love to hear that. It's very interesting. I think even our website, we would love to leverage large language models to optimize SEO. Any other comments? Any other or questions? And I think, as Lila said, you can't completely just rely on ChatGPT as a tool to do everything, because it's not really an automation tool. I think Miriam just mentioned that you can use ChatGPT to generate things like daily workout plan, meal suggestion. But if you would like to do this as a routine, you need to automate that, right? So again, I would recommend tools like Zapier to go with ChatGPT, or any type of large language models like Bard, Anthropic, and then basically they integrate with ChatGPT or OpenAI API, and you can use that to automate this. I've seen use cases like our students built something like there's like an IT manager who would like to create an email-based like invoice or vacation approval process powered by ChatGPT. But basically, he's using Zapier and ChatGPT to sort of filter the emails, and of course they have to follow some sort of format, right? An email title, and then it's going to find, let's say, vacation request or whatever, and it will leverage ChatGPT to sort of understand what's the request and help him summarize everything, and then he can just like email back and say approve, and then it updates some sort of Google Sheet or database. I think that's one of the cool use cases I've seen. It actually generates value for a very busy IT manager. And I've seen use cases like going through emails and just like doing all kinds of translate. We have a student from Korea, and he's dealing with like clients in Korea, and he constantly needs to do translation, right, for his colleagues to understand. So some of the clients just send emails using Korean, and that can be automated as well. That's pretty cool, I think, and also generating like to-do list. So yeah, lots of creative use cases, and just check out the GPT store. There are millions of apps created already, even though most of them are just based on, you know, some sort of prompt template on the GPT engine, but still, I think we'll be seeing some really interesting applications in the near future. Definitely, ChatGPT can do EDA. For those of you who are not familiar, EDA is, you know, exploratory data analysis, right? So if you want to, you know, create visualization on certain data set, as long as, like, you know, you're allowed to upload your company's or your personal data to ChatGPT, then yeah, it can help you do data analysis and doing visualization, or even generating the code for that. It's going to save you a lot of time. But again, as I think, as Lila said, you still sort of need to understand the code that's generated by ChatGPT. So if you don't understand how that works, it'll be extremely painful, because you wouldn't be able to sort of modify it if it doesn't like run properly, right? All right, cool. So I think, but the main point of this session is just for us to discuss how do we embrace generative AI. I think it's yet to tell, right? Whether ChatGPT will replace data scientists. Personally, I don't think that's the case, because I think the core value of a data scientist is not really just writing the code, understanding business logic, which is also like the business rules are constantly changing. If the business rules don't change, right, or if the company doesn't react to the current you know, company financials, right, how the business is doing, or doesn't react to the market dynamics, if it's always fixed, then this job can always be like, has been automated a long time ago. But because business is running a business so dynamic, you know, I think it will be very hard for a language model to sort of get enough training data for that. And also, I think that the communication is also really important. So I recently watched a video. I think it's called a CES, whatever conference. And there's you know, Andrew Ng, who's the co-founder of you know, Coursera, and also the founder of DeepLearning.ai, and also Fei-Fei Li, professor from Stanford. And they were sort of debating, right? But I think I tend to agree with Fei-Fei Li. You know, she's basically saying that people are sort of very interested in exploring autonomous agent nowadays, which is driven by large language model. But she tends to think of this as assistive, you know, agent instead of autonomous agent, because it's very hard to automate everything. But I think the agents or language models can perform specific tasks really, really well. So it can actually really augment your work instead of replace your job, right? So replacing tasks is a different concept from replacing jobs, right? A job has a very, you know, complex workflow, and it's composed of many different tasks, and it can change from time to time. So you can't really hard code it. Like, even think about your daily plan. Like I use Notion a lot for tracking, you know, tasks, and I just realized I'm generating so many different versions of these tasks. It's even hard for me to sort of manage it, let alone like managing the entire company, right, and different teams. And it's very hard to automate the entire process. But these tools can help you perform certain tasks really, really well, and it can probably just replace a lot of these tasks. But I think we eventually will still need these orchestrators, right? So I think it will replace jobs to some degree, but as someone mentioned earlier, we have to keep adapting and learning so we don't get replaced, right? And we're still generating the value. So I think we're just going to play along with these technologies, and it's probably not going to completely replace our job. And it may actually create even more jobs. The other way to think about this is we're sort of running this, you know, data science and AI academy, right? Even like a small, medium business like us, right? The business is actually quite complex. You know, when you're looking at it from an outside world, you may think, okay, it's a training academy. How complex can that be? But you actually need to have all the small functionalities and all the functional teams, right? You need to have sales, marketing, you need to have operations, we need to have IT, you know, need to have like, you know, programs, project managers. And it's actually quite complex. So yeah, just, you know, keep that in mind. I think when someone's job can actually be, you know, or let's say ChatGPT will make a data scientist more efficient. So some people will say that, well, you know, it only takes 20% of the time to do your, you know, whatever task you're supposed to do in the past. So that means you can do, you know, instead of needing 5 people, we just need 1 data scientist now. I sort of disagree with that because I remember, like, you know, working with our project managers and program managers, right? I'm asking for like for some sort of reports. You know, it would be nice if we have this kind of report. It would be nice if we have another report. So we always would like to look at the business, you know, from different angles, different dimensions. But sadly, everyone's so busy, right? It will be very hard for us, you know, a relatively smaller organization like us to have someone who's dedicated to creating all the reports for different teams, right? So which means I probably would want to see 10 different dashboards. There's so many things I would like to know, but I end up only getting 1. You know, and then I'll just live with it, and because I know it's impossible because everyone's busy. You know, I wish we had more budget to hire a team of data scientists, but it doesn't make sense in this case, right? So what I'm saying is that if data scientists can become more efficient, trust me, there'll be way more work for you to do because a company is always dealing with the budget. That's why during COVID, some companies hired a lot of people because they're pretty optimistic about the future, but then later on they have to downsize again. I guess it always works that way, but there's, you know, a lot of, you know, work that can be done. It's just like in the past, due to budget constraint, you can't do, you know, hire a big team to do all whatever you want to do. But now we're becoming more efficient. Trust me, the demand for insight, for data analytics will definitely increase. But it doesn't necessarily increase the job opportunity by 5 times. But I think at least it's going to be there to stay. I don't think it's going to shrink. But by the way, data science job market, even software engineering has been growing in the past few years, even though all we hear is that, some big companies are cutting jobs. That's, and a lot of businesses are yet to start adopting AI, generative AI, and data science because of this generative AI wave. Just that's my 2 cents on this. All right, let's talk about how we can adapt in the generative AI era. So I think obviously we all need to learn generative AI skills. I'm going to sort of briefly discuss a learning path, but regarding what you should be learning, it really depends, right? For small business owners, I think what you need to focus on is not learning how to use Python to build a large language model. It's definitely not necessary. The goal here is probably just leverage, prompt engineering, prompt design, right? And AI automation tool to help you become more efficient. Because, if you're a small business owner, you're starting, right? Probably just yourself, and you're the sales, you're the product manager, maybe you're the IT department, and then you start to hire, different teams as the business grow. So you don't really have the time to do everything. So I think automation is going to help you become much more efficient, right? So yeah, things like, marketing, writing emails, messages, a lot of these, CRM, data analysis and automation, even just orchestrating these data flows, using some of the AI automation tool can help you a lot. But I mean, if you're a data scientist, and definitely you need to, go beyond just working with ChatGPT. ChatGPT can help you as a tool, but how do you stand out? Because everybody will eventually know how to, do prompting and work with ChatGPT. What makes you different as a data scientist? So I think you have to learn more about generative AI. And so, yeah, you have to, pick your specialization, right? Are you going to focus on computer vision? Are you going to focus on natural language processing, or being involved in, roles that allows you to fine tune large language models for a specific industry or company? and building generative AI powered, data science products, right? So definitely there are a lot of things you need to learn. If you don't learn generative AI, I think you'll definitely, your job is at risk, because when everybody start to sort of adapt to this new trend, I think you'll fall behind. For data scientists, I also recommend you upgrading a tool stack, right? It doesn't mean that, whatever Python and SQL stuff is not useful anymore. It's still at its core, right? But maybe ChatGPT can help you write some code. But as I said, you are the person who's in control and who's going to do all of these analysis. But I think as of today, if that's all you know, like Python, SQL, right, sklearn, basic machine learning, it's probably hard to stand out. It doesn't mean you cannot do data scientist job. Like you can totally do it, but the job market is very crowded. So how do you make sure that you can stand out, right? When company make hiring decisions, it's not always about hiring, the person who like the best candidate. A lot of times it's about hiring the right candidate, right? So you need to actually start building, your other skill sets, right? Either going deeper into these technologies or start building, your project experience. So I think hands-on experience, right? Domain knowledge is also very important. But as we start to learn data science and go through this whole process, most people tend to focus on the technical skills, right? And then after a couple of months, you can add a lot of keywords to your resume, start building your portfolio, but it's not enough for you to stand out, I think, in today's job market. Because I think everybody know that they need to build portfolio, right? Maybe you can leverage, Merriam's, the platform they have to improve the portfolio, right? That's definitely useful. Like you always need a good resume. So having mentorship, having a mentor who can help you is important, right? But I think a lot of the candidates, when we work with them on resumes, they actually, like, what they struggle with is they just don't know what else they can put on the resume. Maybe because they don't have too many projects, right? Portfolio projects they can put on the resume, or they always struggle to put relevant work experience because, maybe you come from agriculture background, you come from mechanical engineering background, and you decide to switch career to tech. And then, if your past, previous experience is not related to data and data science, even if you have some portfolio projects, it's not that easy for you to stand out. So gaining real life experience is also very important, right? How to gain that, it's a different story. But as I'm saying, I think you need to start to look beyond the technical skills. Python, SQL, scikit-learn, I think these are the fundamental skills for data scientists in the future. But along the way, I think you need to pick up more GenAI skills, right? You need to start learning more about deep learning neural networks. But also, I highly recommend, right, data scientists to sort of, I think you need to start building more moat, right, around yourself, which is knowing data analytics is probably not alone. I think companies will start to look for generalists who not only know data science, but also know a little bit about data engineering, and they can hack their way around and work with ChatGPT to write some code to do some sort of automation, data cleaning, right? And machine learning engineering, a data scientist who not only know how to build models, but also knowing how to deploy models in production so it becomes a useful part of the product, right? So all of these skills are very important. So I think definitely you'll need to learn, keep learning more. But if you're afraid of learning so many different things, what I can tell you is that a couple of years ago, when we teach students data science, right, we focus on Python, SQL, and scikit-learn. It feels like, a boot camp that runs for 12 weeks. You can only teach students so much. But actually, and today, and we also need to add a little bit data engineering. We need to add a little bit cloud engineering, big data, machine learning engineering. And it feels like it will take 6 months full-time to learn all of these. But actually, that's not the case, because we have ChatGPT and GenAI. So doing research is a lot faster, right? You don't have to struggle for 2 hours just to write some code. You can ask ChatGPT, and maybe just 2 minutes, you'll get some sort of answer, even though it may not be absolutely correct, but it helps you get started quickly. So you're actually going to become a lot more efficient learner, right? So you can take in more in a relatively short amount of time. So all I'm saying is, a lot of the learning roadmap and guideline you see out there, it might be already outdated. You need to learn more so that you can stand out and try to become like a full stack, some sort of like quote unquote full stack data scientist. Because I think the future organizations will always welcome someone who can, who understand the end-to-end pipeline. Because when you look at a data science project, it's not just about data analysis. A lot of times you need to know where to find and source the data. And once you have the raw data, you need to know how to process, right, those data. And if you actually want to make those useful, you need to know how to automate them. So I think, of course, if the company has budget, they can hire data engineers. But I can tell you, a lot of companies, startups, they can't hire a team of data scientists and engineers. If you know more, you're going to get the job, and then you're going to learn and improve on the job, right? So you're going to do more data engineering. I used to come from like a data science background, right? I joined a startup that has 60 people, and I was the second data scientist. The first data scientist was my manager. He's a director. And then I thought I got hired to build machine learning models. But in the first 6 months, the job turned me into a data engineer because there's no data for me to do any machine learning yet. I had to, learn how to work with AWS, build a simple data warehouse. I have to do web scraping, and I had to do a lot of automation and even write some API. And I had to learn it in a hard way. But I'm glad like I have a ton of developers and I can ask them questions, right? And that's why I learned both data science and data engineering skills. And the company has like 300 million users, and I get to work with big data as well. So I think a lot of times you're learning on the job, right? But how do you get that first job? You need to be able to stand out, because it's so easy for people to put all of these relevant keywords on the resume, and it's become like, from job seekers' perspective, it's very hard to land a job or even get noticed. But from hiring companies' perspective, it's actually kind of hard to find the best candidate, because now all resumes look kind of similar, right? And that's why some of the hiring partners, even though they post jobs, they still come to us and say, "Well, can you recommend someone?" Right? Because they know that sometimes the hiring partners, if they they recommend someone, it's already filtered, and it could be a good candidate. At least they will be sort of looking at the resume and give them an interview. So I guess that's my point on this. Hopefully that's useful for you. So we need to learn more and we need to adapt, but how? So this is not a session about like, generative AI. We do have a GenAI review session introducing, these topics in details. I think it's maybe tomorrow. But today I'll just quickly, lay out, some fundamental stuff here. Hopefully that can inspire you and give you some ideas on how to get started with generative AI. Okay. So first of all, I think there are different levels, right, of expertise when it comes to generative AI. I think prompt engineering is is something that everyone will need to learn. It doesn't matter whether it's Bard, Microsoft tools, or ChatGPT. I think you need to know how to do basic prompting, because the goal here is just to make yourself more efficient, and it helps you, right? So prompt engineering is very important. And then later on, when you build some sort of, I think someone mentioned like LangChain, you're still writing prompts. So prompting is a very useful skill to have. And the large language model, the foundation model, is going to become more and more powerful. In some way, it's going to reduce the need for writing like perfect prompts, because the language model is becoming more powerful. But I think prompt, is a skill set, I think everyone needs to have. And next up, I think what you want to learn, if you would like to become more technical in generative AI, then you need to have the basic, right, machine learning and deep learning knowledge, and provided that you know Python already, right? Python and basic data analysis. But you need to learn machine learning and deep learning before you can even start to sort of comprehend large language models from a technical perspective. So that requires you to learn things like, neural networks, right? Working with packages like, PyTorch, optimization, Hugging Face. These are the fundamentals you need to have before you start to build large language models or fine-tune large language models, right? So the next step would be finding your specialization. because generative AI is not just about large language model, right? And it's becoming more and more multimodal. So whether it's NLP, right, which right now everybody's focusing on large language modeling, but the traditional NLP is still there. It's if you look at the research papers presented at some of the top conferences, it's not all about large language modeling. People are still doing active research in many other areas because large language model is not going to solve all of your challenges, right? And in some machine learning tasks, it's just not the best approach. For example, if you would like to do customer churn analysis or fraud detection, yeah, you can definitely do prompting and train your large language model on those data set, and it becomes very good at it. It's yet to be proved, but in practice, you need something that's working in real time when it comes to fraud detection, right? When someone else is swiping your credit card in a different city, you want to know that as soon as possible, right? Or the transaction needs to be stopped because it's suspicious. Imagine you're working with a large language model on that. Its prediction speed is very slow, right? And in practice, there are millions of transactions happening, at the same moment. You need actually simpler algorithms that can generate predictions, generate inference really at a really low latency, and also very cheap to implement. Imagine you're going to send all of these data, millions of transactions per second or per minute, to ChatGPT or large language models, which charges based on token, and it relies on a GPU cluster to generate the inference. It's just too expensive. You need a way cheaper way to implement that, right? So even if it can do a really good job, it doesn't mean it's the best, methodology or the best tool to be deployed for some of those use cases, right? But anyways, we're talking about generative AI today, so I think you need to find your specialization, right? So specialization, large language modeling, and computer vision is another area, right? But it's not, it's going beyond computer vision. Some of the researchers we've worked with, they do, they work on analyze like 3D LiDAR data, for example, or their applications is like underwater, right? Object detection. So it goes beyond two-dimensional data. So computer vision has a lot of use cases, vision transformers, those, start to leverage similar technologies, to transformers, something worth looking into. But don't forget that there's, time series data. Now there's like time series related large language models, right? It's actually actively, being developed, but there's also, voice data, there's graph data. Some of those areas are actually being very actively developed. So again, you can find your specialization, but there are definitely a lot of things you need to learn. And let's not forget about data, because it's very hard for a startup to win on algorithms, right? The base models, the foundation model, like Google's PaLM, GPT algorithms, these are trained, and ChatGPT is costing OpenAI more than $100 million to train, right? And then they release multiple iterations every year. So it's very expensive. So most of the startups can only do something like fine tuning, right? It's more cost-effective way of doing this. Large companies open source a large language model. That's the base model. And then you work with that and you use your own data. You either curate, open source public data to fine tune the data to a certain domain, or the company you work for has certain, domain specific data. For example, one of the fine tuned data is Bloomberg GP. I think it's called Bloomberg GPT, but it's basically GPT trained on finance data, right? So they happen to have those proprietary data, and that they can build something really cool and useful for the company, right? So I think companies are going to win based on the proprietary data they have. And what if you don't have proprietary data? Well, you're going to start seeing more and more applications out there. Their goal is to collect data so that they can train better LLMs. And the GPT stores, like the GPTs, I believe one of the motivations is actually to collect data. Because you can just reverse engineer it and you can just know. I think as soon as someone come up with like a GPTs, which is getting popular, and right away, like within 24 hours, you will see like some similar GPTs out there. And some people are complaining that like the copycat is even using exactly the same name and logo, which is funny. But anyways, so because there's no moat there, if you don't have proprietary data, if it's just built based on some sort of prompting, then anybody can do that. And the party that's ultimately benefiting from all of these is actually OpenAI. But it's promising, right? So you never know what it's gonna eventually turn out to be. Hopefully something really amazing, but I think data is still the core. So when you're going through a learning path to learn how to build large language model, I can tell you fine-tuning, the scripts is provided. It's not that hard to fine-tune model. Tuning a large language model to your own purpose, the hardest part is the data part. Because when you collect data from the web or whatever sources, right, the data has to go through like a refinement process, right? You have to do deduplication, okay? Because same web page, might have been copied and pasted in many different places, right? So if in the training data set of ChatGPT, there's a web page, right, they use for training, and then there's in the test data set that they use for validation, there's a similar, web page or document out there. It's actually going to contaminate the data. So one of the biggest challenges is actually how to dedupe the data so the data is cleaned, right? And you have to remove bias, right? And there's like toxic stuff that you would like to remove. And it's a big challenge on its own, right? And you're dealing with toxic content in different languages as well, right? So there are a lot of data cleaning stuff you need to do. That turns out to be data engineering, or just the data engineering part of data science and AI. That's a very important topic. There are 7-8 different steps you need to go through, but focusing on that is going to help you build some moat and advantages. A lot of company, when they interview people who generative AI specialists, they're definitely going to ask you about the data preparation, because they may already have the core algorithms already, right? So something else related to data cleaning, for example, data augmentation. What if you don't have enough data, right? And then you have to use generative AI tools, right, or algorithms to generate data, but how to control the quality of those. And data annotation, right, is also very important. So again, data is actually very important in the generative AI world. These large language models have been open sourced. They're closed loops, ones that, such as GPT, but most people are working with open source models unless you pay for ChatGPT or the GPT, like OpenAI, right? So fine tuning is becoming easier and easier. And what's left, when it comes to like building some sort of advantage, it's actually the data. So keep that in mind. Being really good at data cleaning, organizing data in a way that it can be used to train and fine tune large language model is going to be one of the core skills GenAI experts need to have. Okay. And then, and of course, you need to know how to do fine tuning. There are many different ways of fine tuning large language models. And the reason why we need to do fine tuning is because these foundational models, such as GPT-4, GPT-3, they're trained on the data on collected from the web. They have a lot of knowledge, but they don't really follow instructions, right? And that's why sometimes they're like just blabbering and talking nonsense. And that's why you have to do some sort of instruction tuning, right? Which means this is also related to data preparation. You need to generate question and answer pairs, right, of the data or instruction data set. So you're going to do instruction tuning, but this is not that straightforward, right? People are using reinforcement learning and different kind of ways to do this, but the cost is also very high, right? The cost of annotating these data sometimes require human as well. But what most people will be able to do, right? And then you have to do like alignment. But this is part of like instruction tuning, because sometimes ChatGPT will tell you that, well, as a generative AI chatbot or something, I'm not able to tell you this, or I simply don't know, or I don't have, I'm only updated up to my data is only, up to, let's say, December 2023. So I don't know anything that's happening in January yet. It's trained to provide answers this way. So alignment is a big topic. Reinforcement learning is often used. But I think what most people will be able to do is, just doing some sort of fine tuning, using more efficient algorithms, right? So you can do something like, in context learning, indexing, which is related to using like, vector databases. And then there's, soft prompt, different ways, but also there's, things like LoRa and QLoRa. This is becoming a little bit more technical, but these are just different ways for you to fine tune your large language models. But again, in order to do all of these, you will still need the data set for training and fine tuning at much, smaller scale. And then you can fine tune GPT, whatever Llama models to your specific domain, right? So you'll need to learn these techniques, of course. But after this, you get a large language model, right? It's not generating any value yet. It's only working in your Jupyter notebook. So if your company is actually trying to leverage large language model, then you have to deploy the model, right? Deploying large language model is a whole different topic, right? This is something related to MLOps, or a new term, LLM ops, right? Large language model operations. That means you need to understand cloud infrastructure, right? Such as Amazon Web Services, okay? And then you also need to do, understand how to do large language model inference, which means deploying a model for prediction, right? So that you can sort of ask questions and get answers. Now, inference turned out to be not as straightforward as a traditional machine learning model, because it runs on GPUs, and of course you can deploy that on CPUs, but you need ways to optimize that, right? For example, using VLLM, but this is where you spend the money, because training the model may cost you $1 million, but inference may cost you way more. The cost of generating one prediction might be very low, right? But as soon as you start to use that in production, right, the cost will start to pile up. Because obviously you want the business to be successful. You want to have millions of users, and if everybody start to hit your large language model application, and then you're going to need either to pay OpenAI huge bills, or you have to figure out how to save money on inference, because you're running more and more GPUs, right? And also, some of the models, when you deploy them, it takes 1 second to generate answer. That's just not acceptable in many business use cases. So you have to figure out better ways, more efficient way to do inference. That requires more engineering, and of course, it's actively being researched and developed as well. And then you need to monitor, right, your model performance in production, and also validation is or evaluation of your model is a big topic as well. Because you often see like people comparing different models and saying ChatGPT-4 or GPT-4 is beating Google models. It's not necessarily the case in your specific use case. Like, you always need to find the model that works best for you in your use case. So some of those metrics, right, you see, in blog posts, on public, leaderboards, because there's no specific use cases. They have to use some sort of public methods, right, to do benchmarking, so they can compare models. But in real businesses, the way we evaluate these models, we might be using very different metrics. So there might be the best model, right, on a public leaderboard, but it actually doesn't work very well for your particular use case. So you need to understand how to evaluate a model as well. So again, there are lots of things we need to learn. It's pretty deep, and there are many things you need to consider. But hopefully that gives you some sort of inspiration and idea, like what you need to learn if you want to start from the very beginning, right? Common use cases, prompt engineering, that I suggest everyone learn, to machine learning, deep learning, and then pay attention to auto ML and or low code, no code like AI tools. These are all automation related, which means you don't have to write a lot of code, and even business users will be able to build basic machine learning models. And that's why I think data scientists will need to learn more, because the world is changing. Like you can't, part of your what you've learned can be automated, and you can use those kind of automation to help yourself. But that's why you need to sort of keep learning more, because there are more exciting stuff and more powerful stuff out there, such as large language models, computer vision, or generative, vision, whatever models that you can work with to build some really interesting applications, right? So I think data scientist role is going beyond just like building a model and testing it in the labs. You're actually helping sort of shaping the product strategy and work with software engineers to build AI products that can be. There are things that your company want to do in the past, it's not possible, but now with these new technologies, it's actually possible, right? So there will be some exciting things that you can build. And of course, you have to learn these first. And definitely focus on data. That's the differentiator here if you would like to win in the job market. Because on your resume, if you can show these keywords, and people will definitely be interested in you. Because everybody else will be putting like large language models and llama, and you can just read a blog post and go to GitHub and copy some code and you can train something, but it doesn't turn you into expert. When you work on real life project, you're spending more time on data. Again, just like data analysts, data engineers, data scientists traditionally spend a lot of time on SQL, right? If you actually seriously would like to work in large language modeling, you have to know how to process these unstructured data. Okay, fine-tuning is something definitely will give you some competitive advantage, because there will be a huge demand there. Not every business, I think most of the companies will not be willing to pay OpenAI because it's simply too expensive for their use cases. So it's either the very smaller players, they don't have a lot of use cases, a lot of volume, right? They're just using it to build some simple apps, or the large enterprises, right, who would like to rely on this, and they have the deep pocket. For most of the companies in the middle, they will want to sort of, just fine tune their own models, but they have to have the proprietary data that gives them some sort of advantage. And they will need data scientists and, ML engineers, whatever, large language model scientists and developer to help them fine tune the models. I think there's a big need there. And then, of course, the biggest demand will actually be in, now we have large language model. What do we do, right? You're building applications. In the indexing world, what's getting popular is RAG, right? Retriever, augmented generation. This is a hot topic, but I think what makes more sense for most of the companies out there is actually leveraging RAG to build knowledge bases instead of investing a ton of money in just building their own large language model. So yeah, there's a lot to learn, but hopefully, this is useful for you. And I'm going to stop here and see if you guys have any questions. From Rafael, any project recommendations for portfolios? Miriam, like you work in the space and you have a platform, feel free to chime in. I think when it comes to data science or generative AI projects, my recommendation is for data science projects and machine learning, pick a domain, start from a domain. Let's say you're interested in insurance, and then do some research on this on this industry, and find some common machine learning and data science use cases, and then go backwards and find relevant data set. And the data set can come from Kaggle, different sources. You can collect your own data. I guess it will be hard to collect real data from insurance or banking, but for some other use cases, you might want to scrape data yourself. These all shows effort, right? Instead of just taking a CSV file. Because in practice, I think at least data scientists will start their work with some sort of SQL and data extraction and data manipulation. So I would avoid projects that only ask you to only involves one CSV input. That sounds more like an exercise to me instead of a project. So put more effort into data collection and data cleaning. That would be very useful. And then, of course, go through the ML pipeline to build models, and ideally you publish that and they put that in your portfolio, like write a blog post. These seems like extra effort, but you need that to separate yourself from other competitors in the job market. And when it comes to generative AI, I think what's going to help you stand out is definitely projects related to RAG, right? If you're not familiar with it, but just look into that. It requires the knowledge of, for example, vector databases, working with LangChain, Llama Index, and how to work with a basic large language model for inference, but also chunking those data in documents. And so I think that would be a nice project to have. At least I think in the next 12 months, it's going to give you some advantage. And also, if possible, any kind of machine learning models you build, deploy that in the cloud. It doesn't have to be production grade, but building an inference API and deploying that in Docker and in AWS or Azure using a Docker container, or using SageMaker. I think these will be helpful. And I haven't seen a lot of people doing that, because most people, right? I guess 95% of the resumes out there, when it comes to portfolio project, it's just people focus on just developing the machine learning model. But you don't see a lot of people doing the first step, which is data collection, data cleaning, or the last step, which is model deployment, right? And so if we can do the first step and the last step combined with the machine learning piece, it's going to help you build a stronger portfolio. All right, cool. Well, thanks everyone for attending this session, and I hope it's useful. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys in some of our future events. You can stay in touch with us on through our meetup group. Most of these videos the recordings will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So you can go to youtube.com/@WeCloudData. We're about to start a podcast, I think in January. And if you would like to become a speaker, let us know. We'd love to sort of host meetup sessions and podcasts. And if you would like to learn data science and generative AI, we have data science boot camps. What differentiates WeCloudData's boot camp is that we have a consulting company and we put our students on real life projects. So they work with our clients and our project managers to gain real life experience that they can use to put on their resume to fill the experience gap. And then we're launching a very exciting generative AI and no code machine learning course that's targeting anyone who would like to get an introduction of generative AI. But if you would like to go deep, we have computer vision specialization course, and we have large language model course where we cover everything from data preparation, model fine-tuning, building RAG applications, as well as model deployment in our MLOps course. So yeah, check out our website if you are interested. Other than that, I'll end this session and wish everyone a good evening.